The Eagles are officially running out of time, as their options at OC continue to dwindle by the day, with some of the best remaining names dropping out of the race. There is hope, though, as an extremely exciting name just became available, while the Birds also might still have a chance at implementing Mike McDaniel's offense. So we'll talk about that, along with all the other most recent OC updates, the under-the-radar problem with Philly's offense, the Birds' latest official coaching change, and Brandon Graham's promising update on A.J. Brown. So let's get started right now. It's really a shame that by the time Super Bowl 60 rolls around in just a little under 2 weeks, we aren't going to have the chance to see the Eagles compete for their second straight Super Bowl title, which, obviously that would be disappointing in any context, but it's especially tough because this year was an absolutely golden opportunity for Philly. No disrespect to the Patriots and Seahawks because they're both great teams, but nobody expected this matchup. The fact of the matter is, the NFL was wide open this year. And the sad thing is, if the Eagles hadn't flat out wasted a season on Kevin Patullo and had an actual real play caller, chances are we'd be watching a rematch of Super Bowl 52 in just a couple weeks. But instead, the Eagles deployed an offense that ran 48 hitch routes in their wildcard loss to the 49ers, which is almost more than the Patriots and Seahawks combined in their 5 total playoff games. Which just goes to show you how inept and clueless the Eagles were on offense this year. And also how important it is to get the right offensive coordinator to captain the ship next season. Speaking of which, there's been a ton of developments on that front these past couple of days, and I gotta tell you, it's been pretty concerning.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
The options are definitely getting thin for the Eagles. Let's just say that. But we'll start on a positive note with some great news, as the perfect candidate to be the Eagles' next OC just officially became available. That being Rams pass game coordinator Nathan Scheelhaase. As with LA's loss to Seattle, the 35-year-old can now put all his focus and energy into interviewing for other jobs. Now, there's a solid chance that he could get a head coaching job with a team like the Browns who have interviewed him, but on the occasion that he doesn't get or want either job, the Eagles' OC position could be the next best thing for him. And for the Birds, the idea of landing Scheelhaase, who is considered one of the brightest young offensive minds in the game, is highly thought of around the league and one of the hottest names in NFL coaching cycles right now, would be pretty exciting. And obviously, the main draw there is that he spent the last couple of seasons under Sean McVay, learning from him and adopting his offensive scheme and style and concept. So the idea is that he could come to Philly and implement a version of that offense, which with all the talent the Eagles have, especially if they keep A.J. Brown, more on that later, but that'd be pretty scary here. And we've also seen other coaches from the Sean McVay tree have success before. Plus, for anybody saying that Scheelhaase hasn't called plays before, that is true at the NFL level, but he did call plays during his stint as the offensive coordinator for Iowa State, so he has experience calling plays and sequencing things at least to some degree, and he was also the run game coordinator there at one point, which is a bonus and gives me confidence that he could find ways to get more out of Saquon Barkley and this offensive line as well. Plus, he's a former college quarterback, so aside from the fact that he hasn't called plays in the NFL, he's really the perfect candidate for Philly at this point. Now, I'd say the chances of actually landing him probably aren't that high, but we'll see. Now, the good news is it seems like the chances that Scheelhaase ends up with the Browns slightly went down, as he just completed a second interview with them that lasted multiple hours, but no deal materialized. However, he still is a finalist for that job. Plus, we gotta wait and see what happens with the Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur. If he gets the Cardinals head coaching job, maybe Scheelhaase steps into the Rams offensive coordinator role. If LaFleur doesn't get that job, maybe Scheelhaase could go to the Cardinals. A lot that still has to happen, and he very much is a dream target for the Birds. Probably not super likely, but we'll see. And at this point, Eagles fans could use a break because the other recent news in the OC search hasn't been very good. Last week, I made several videos talking about Bears offensive coordinator Declan Doyle or LSU's offensive coordinator Eric Weis Jr. and former Texans OC and Dolphins pass game coordinator Bobby Slowik. And they were probably my 3 favorite realistic candidates remaining. But now, just days later, things have completely changed. And it started over the weekend when the Dolphins, under new head coach Jeff Hafley, promoted Bobby Slowik to their offensive coordinator position. This coming just one day after Slowik had interviewed for the Eagles job. And naturally, Slowik's decision sparked a ton of noise, with people continuing to push the narrative that this is an indictment on Nick Sirianni or Jalen Hurts or the Eagles, but for Slowik, he was already in Miami. He's established there. He knows the players. It sucks, but the decision does make sense for him. But he wasn't the last candidate to fall out of the race, as early Monday morning, Diana Rossini reported that the Eagles did speak to LSU's offensive coordinator Charlie Weis Jr., but he has informed them that he will be remaining in college, which that stinks because, again, I thought Weis Jr. was one of the most intriguing remaining candidates, and once again, we have another top coach that the Eagles seem to hold in high regard falling out of the race. And then, just a little later, Rossini dropped another report saying that Bears offensive coordinator Declan Doyle has withdrawn his name from consideration for the Eagles job and will stick with the Bears in 2026. And this one hurts for me, because I was really starting to get excited about the idea of Declan Doyle coming to Philly, becoming the next Ben Johnson, hopefully staying a couple years, and taking this Eagles offense to a whole new level. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. And, it does make sense for him to stay in Chicago. Like Slowik, he's established there, he knows the players, he knows the coaches, and he had a ton of success last year, but this is now another top coach falling out of the Eagles race. Although the fact that he, quote, withdrew his name from consideration doesn't mean he necessarily chose to stay in Chicago over going to the Eagles. And in fact, like John McMullen pointed out, it likely means that the Eagles weren't going to offer him the job anyway.
Let me know about the job.
Actually, Michael, I think we're going to take it in another direction. We're not giving you the job.
You know what? That is actually good. So, I respectfully withdraw my name from consideration. Do you accept my withdrawal?
I do.
Good.
If that is true, I don't agree with that decision, but, regardless, whatever happened, I think it stinks to miss out on a guy like Declan Doyle, because again, I was really getting excited about that possibility. But he wasn't the last, as later that day, former Giants OC and interim head coach Mike Kafka chose to accept some sort of high-ranking offensive staff role with the Detroit Lions, making that 4 guys the Eagles interviewed to drop out in the past few days, and 3 all on Monday. Now, for Kafka, I'm not too bent out of shape about this. I mean, he definitely was not at the top of my list. But as Anthony DeBona pointed out, it might not be a coincidence that 3 different coaches that the Eagles interviewed, quote-unquote, withdrew or accepted another job all on the same day, as the Eagles could be starting to narrow down their candidates as they start to kind of get to the end of this search. Although I will say, it is pretty concerning to me that the Birds reportedly were having conversations with Arthur Smith before he decided to take the OC job at Ohio State, so hopefully that was just a formality and the Eagles casting a wide net. But again, this is yet another report from Diana Rossini, who at this point, I'm kind of convinced she's just using the Eagles for engagement, but that's a whole different topic. Moving on, though, another big storyline the past few days, it's what's been going on between the Eagles and Cowboys, as of course Dallas just stole Christian Parker for their defensive coordinator job, and then just a few days later, they blocked the Eagles from interviewing their offensive coordinator, Klayton Adams, which, as frustrating as that is, Dallas technically made the smart move, because Adams coming to be Philly's OC would be a lateral move, meaning the Cowboys could block it, while for the Eagles, Parker was promoted from his former position in Philly, so they couldn't. But still, this only makes me hate Dallas even more, because even though he didn't call plays, Adams was offensive coordinator to an offense that was 2nd in yards, 2nd in passing, 9th in rushing, and 7th in scoring. So, assuming he could have recreated some of that success in Philly, that could have been awesome. So for Dallas to block it, especially after stealing one of our top coaches, that really pisses me off, but at the same time, if roles are reversed, I would want the Eagles to do the exact same thing. Speaking of Parker, though, the Eagles officially have named his replacement as of Monday, with Diana Rossini yet again on the report saying the Eagles have promoted safeties coach Joe Casper to defensive backs coach and the defensive pass game coordinator, which I don't think this is any sort of surprise, and I actually just mentioned it in a video a couple days ago. Casper's well respected, well liked by the players. He spent 4 total seasons in Philly, 3 years under Vic Fangio. Vic likes him. He's learned from him and Parker, so this promotion to me makes a ton of sense. Speaking of which, and getting back to the OC search, the Eagles just held an interview with a guy who could also make a ton of sense, that being former Dolphins offensive coordinator Frank Smith, which that's a name that I, like I'm sure many of you, was pretty unfamiliar with, but considering the fact that he was Mike McDaniel's OC in Miami for all 4 years, Smith might actually be exactly what the Eagles need. As of course, Mike McDaniel was the #1 guy on the Eagles list in terms of offensive coordinators at the start of this search, and even though they couldn't land him, Frank Smith might still be able to bring a version of that Mike McDaniel offense to Philly after all. Now, he's never called plays, which obviously that's not great, but he's got a ton of NFL experience, having coached for 16 years for the Saints, Bears, Raiders, Chargers, and Dolphins, and again, obviously, those 4 years under McDaniel could prove to be huge, and Smith was actually ranked as the #1 OC during the 2023 season when the Dolphins were absolutely lighting teams up. So, of the remaining realistic candidates, Smith might just be towards the very top of that list. Plus, also side note, I love the fact that the Eagles seem to be very interested in bringing in a version of the Mike McDaniel offense, because that shows that they could be looking to make some very big changes. What I don't love, though, is their interview of Texans quarterback coach Jerrod Johnson, who's never called plays, has overseen the regression of CJ Stroud these past 2 seasons, and also spent a year on staff with Nick Sirianni in Indy back in 2020. I mean, all those things are red flags to me, so hopefully Johnson isn't a serious candidate to be the OC, but one guy who seems to be a serious candidate is Packers QB coach Sean Mannion, who the Eagles have already apparently talked to virtually and will interview in person this week. And I'm not a fan of that. I mean, I get the appeal of him coaching Jordan Love, I guess, but the guy's only been coaching in the NFL for 2 years. He's obviously never called plays, and nothing on his resume really sticks out. So, I don't really get this one. Like, this just feels like another shot in the dark hire that more than likely wouldn't work out. But it's crazy because after all that... It's crazy because this is where we're at with the Eagles OC search. It's kind of slim pickings at this point. Like, Ian Rappaport mentioned Brian Daboll, Bob Cooter, and Matt Nagy as 3 of the top candidates left. If they could get Daboll, which I'm still not holding out hope for that'd be great. But actually scratch that, because it was just reported by Adam Schefter that Daboll is now officially set to become the next offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans, which, that's not exactly a surprise. We all knew that was coming if he wasn't going to get the Bills head coaching job. Actually, Schefter said it was because he didn't get the Raiders head coaching job. But regardless, Daboll is gone, and the Eagles have to pivot elsewhere. So, who is to guys like Bob Cooter and Matt Nagy? That, I wouldn't exactly be too thrilled if they got either one of those guys, but looks like we could be trending in that direction. I feel like Bob Cooter seems like a pretty realistic option at this point. They just lost my top guy that was still out there in Joe Brady as he became the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. So, I wasn't necessarily expecting him to be a realistic option for the Eagles, but definitely sucks that they've now officially lost him and he's no longer an option. And again, the list of candidates continues to shrink, and there's only so many options left out there. So the Eagles got to make a decision soon, so we'll see how it goes. Rappaport also did say something interesting, though, that I wanted to note about why these coaches may be passing up on the Eagles' job, with him noting that it has much less to do with the team itself and the personnel. So, Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, they're off the hook a little bit, and it's more to do with the high-pressure environment just with the media and the fans and the sky-high expectations. I mean, plain and simple, if you don't succeed as the Eagles offensive coordinator, you're gone. So, like I said last week, not everyone is built for Philadelphia, not everyone can deal with that pressure, and you're seeing that here during this OC search. And now coming in with some breaking news here on a Tuesday, a new intriguing name was just potentially added to the list of candidates for Philly, that being former Jets offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand, as New York just did what they always do and made a pretty ridiculous decision to fire their OC over 3 weeks after their season ended. And even though the offense was really bad last year, Engstrand was almost certainly not the problem, as he had to deal with probably the worst offensive talent in the entire league, terrible quarterback play, and an injury to their one real playmaker in Garrett Wilson. But Engstrand did the best with what he had, creating a pretty solid passing scheme that got guys open, and in fact, the Jets were 4th in average separation on intermediate passes. And Engstrand also spent several years working under Ben Johnson in Detroit, learning from him, and he also did call plays for the Jets last year, so he's built up a little experience there and a feel for calling the game. So honestly, with the guys that are left out there, Engstrand might just be the best, most realistic candidate for the Birds, and him coming available right now might just be exactly what they needed. So no doubt they need to call him as soon as possible. Regardless of who gets the offensive coordinator job, though, I actually thought Eagles Eric made a really good point on Twitter on Monday, saying that any offensive coordinator, including Kellen Moore, likely would have struggled in Philly last year because of the subpar play of the offensive line. And getting a good OC won't fix all the problems if the O-line doesn't get back on track next season. And honestly, I agree. I mean, I talked a bunch this season about how much this offensive line was underperforming. I mean, they just weren't playing up to the standard that we got so used to seeing from them. And guys like Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens were clearly hurt and dropped off a cliff from the year before. Plus, Lane Johnson was obviously out for a while. Jordan Mailata took a step back. It just was not a good season from this offensive line, and it really hurt the offense, especially in the run game. So, yes, getting the right OC is super, super important, but also the offensive line needs to bounce back for this offense to be successful next year. But now, moving on to some other coaching news real quick, the Packers have officially hired former Eagles defensive coordinator and Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon as their new defensive coordinator. All I got to say is, Packers fans, have fun with that one.
Good.
Then the Giants hired former Eagles defensive backs coach and Titans defensive coordinator Dennard Wilson as their new DC. Not a fan of that. Like I said last week, I really like Dennard Wilson, and I think he'll unfortunately do a great job for the Giants. And then also, Eagles D-line coach Clint Hurt interviewed for the Dolphins defensive coordinator job, which that's not good news because Hurt's a phenomenal D-line coach who's really helped guys like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Moro Ojomo break out. And he's a really valuable member of this Eagles staff. So hopefully they don't lose him. And also, assuming he still wants to fix things and be here, hopefully they don't lose A.J. Brown either. And I bring that up because I wanted to take a look at some recent comments from Brandon Graham, which he made on a recent episode of his podcast, as he seems to think that A.J. will be back with the Birds in 2026.
You mentioned A.J. in the beginning. What do you expect like the offseason to be like for A.J.? You think he's still going to be an Eagle?
I think so. I do. Howie don't want to get rid of no good players.
Exactly, as he said. And Jalen, in his final comments of the season, said that he and A.J. have gotten to a better place lately.
And they can build together with a new guy. But that's why I say it's just got to be somebody that everybody is like, yep,
yeah,
hey, let's do it. Because if A.J. and all the guys that was disgruntled last year, we got to get everybody believing it and what's coming in. And I think a veteran person or someone that got respect in the league will just have everybody kind of change a belief and get a re-energized feeling about it. And I know, man, for me, I'm just when I see that situation, it's just somebody that's gonna spark them to give them some good joy for what's to come this season.
At the end of the day, I don't think really any of us know what exactly has been going on with A.J. Brown. We haven't heard from him since the season ended. Who knows if all these leaked reports that have come out are true? But who knows? Maybe it's not as big of a deal as it's being made out to be. And like BG said, maybe getting the right offensive coordinator in here could help calm some of this stuff down, and AJ and the Eagles can reconcile their differences and run it back for the 2026 season. But of course, I'll be keeping my eye on that situation just as well as all the other Eagles news that comes out throughout this entire offseason. So if you don't want to miss anything, make sure you subscribe and you turn on notifications, and also drop a like down below on this video if you did enjoy and you want to show some support. It really does help me out a ton, guys. So take 2 seconds, hit the like button. Let's see if we can get 500 likes today, and also hit the hype button as well because that helps me out a ton too. And leave a comment just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. Of the remaining available options, who do you want the Eagles to bring in as the next offensive coordinator? And if you do want to watch another Eagles video going over how Jerrod Campbell could break out next season and be the perfect replacement for Nakobe Dean, as well as a potential Mekhi Becton reunion in Philly, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.